Now, this kind of criticism of capitalism, in particular, its contradictions within the global economy. I'm very glad to be here to criticize capitalism from the South. And the name of my text is From the South, an invitation for meeting appearances. And that's what I was doing, an invitation. Thank you all for being here. You can follow the text in the screen. Thank you. Very kind of you. You can follow the text on the screen. Thanks to Silvio, who is managing it. So, thank you for being here, sharing your time with me at this hour. Congratulations to the organizers, Peter, Inca, and the Mercury Society. I won't forget to mention the excellent philosophical Mercurians, Andrew Finberg, Andy Lamas, Charles Wright, Douglas Kellner. To them, I'd like to dedicate this talk. They are my masters. At the end of the one-dimensional man, Marcuse observes that the more comfortable and longer life that advanced industrial society promote, an achievement that apparently deprives the critical political opposition of their basis, this achievement is not for everybody. I will not say when I quote because you can see. It's a quotation. The conquest of scarcity is still confined to small areas of industrial society. Their prosperity covers up the inferno inside and outside their borders. Marcuse highlights that there is a conservative popular base, but underneath it, there is a different one. The substratum of the outcasts and outsiders, the exploited and the persecuted of other races and other colors. People of ghettos, of the so-called third world, who lives far from the blessing of capitalism. Their opposition hits the system from without and is therefore not deflected by the system. It is an elementary force which violates the rules of the game and, in doing so, reveals it as a rigged game. And when people notice it and start refusing to play the game, this fact perhaps marks the beginning of the end of a period, and nothing indicates that it will be a good end. The only chance Marcuse considers in 1965 is that the historical extremes may meet the most advanced consciousness of humanity and its most exploited force. It's nothing but a chance. Meetings are still necessary now. Encounters of historical streams must happen. At first, it's possible to understand the most exploited force as those who need to sell their own physical strength at any price, and the most advanced consciousness as a reference to intellectuals and artists. Meaning, on one hand, that intellectuals and artists should join the most exploited manual workers in their material demands, and, on the other hand, that exploited workers should be conscious of the value of their material workforce, without which even the most acute consciousness remains powerless. You will consider that it perhaps may be possible to add a new level of interpretation to the necessary meeting between force and consciousness, since the most advanced consciousness is increasingly also an exploited intellectual workforce in the service of creating skills and mechanism that produces or conducts to a false consciousness, a phenomenon carefully described by Marx and Engels, which operates, the false consciousness, operates in different classes, in different countries, and different levels of society. It operates as a way of thinking that prevents people from perceiving the structure of the real situation. The systematically produced false consciousness is responsible or irresponsible for the increasing irrationality of the whole. Any measure for change remains mere palliative unless a radical change of consciousness reaches the nadir where the subjective impulses and objective fetishization are constantly renewed. Now, the real existent forces which could move toward more rational, that is, emancipatory purposes, are being diverted from their target and directed toward fighting each other hatefully. This is a big capital-led movement of polarization through growing racism, nationalism, misogyny, xenophobia, populism, and so on, and thereby weakens its potential opponents. On the desire to overcome this mechanism of deviation, divide into rule, with the power of eros, lies the focus of our presentation from a southern perspective. As you know, centuries of burning fossil fuels and of mineral being ripped off the earth in toxic process has produced wealth in the north and a lot of holes in the global south. Still, the global south represents 80% of the world's population and more than 70% of global economic growth. In December 1975, sponsored by United Nations, 27 nations gathered in Paris for the Conference of International Economic Cooperation for debates that intended to restructure the relationship between liberated nations of the South and their former colonizers in the North. Former is wishful thinking, yeah? In 1980, the Independent Commission for International Development Issues, chaired by the German guy, William Brandt, mapped the line that separated the global north from the global south. The neologism, global north and global south, describes a socioeconomic gap that often coincides with a geographic position. The so-called Brandt line separated the nations of the developing south from the former empires of the north, the poor from the rich. This line endures to this day. Last July, during the European Union Community of Latin America and Caribbean States Summit, a new proposal for the dialogue between South and North took place in Brussels. Some remarks of it. These remarks I cut and paste from text published by Progressive International, that is an organization led by Yanis Varoufakis of Greece. Investment treatments defend northern claims of profiting from southern's original people path to sustainable development. Trade agreements protect northern intellectual property from southern health and habitat. Bailout packages pay out to northern creditors while keeping southern economies trapped in debt. The rules that define the international order are not evenly applied. North simply cites national security to free itself from the very rules it has written. Natural, including human resources, are pillaged. Sanctions weaponize the financial system and laws defend profits. The international system has functioned under the leadership of the global north. Hegemony is the phenomenon whereby one group leads the whole by projecting its interests as a global interest. But the global north hegemony does not represent all the people of the global north, but that of this ruling class. The majority of the global north should join hands with the majority of the global south to construct a new world. On a rapidly warming planet, a real South-North dialogue is indispensable for human survival. Confronted with a crisis of existential proportions, big capital powers sink deeper into cynicism, downplaying the crisis to deny its own responsibility for it, finding scapegoats to be hated, and offering solidarity programs. A new dialogue should increase a common vision and motivate alliances that cross the North-South division in search of cooperation. Cooperation is the only exit from extinction. So it's our keyword. Cooperation are ultimately Cooperation here ultimately implies going beyond the division that places nature at one pole and civilization at the other. And this is something that sounds as impossible in capitalist cultures. Let's remember that long ago in history, you can say, once upon a time, some societies established a division between nature and civilization. This division echoes Plato's division from body and mind. It's an old philosophical problem. From this first division between nature and civilization derived several others, like essential versus historical. From now on, I'm not going to say versus anymore, but and. Essential and historical, objective and subjective, exterior and interior, immanent and transcendent, necessary and contingent, feeling and knowledge, and so on. Later, the same societies which had established the first division between nature and civilization made a distinction between themselves, who made the division, and the societies that did not make this division from then on, called primitive, wild, savage. The first big division, nature and civilization, is internal, whereas the second division, civilized versus savage, is external, according to Latour. I'm using here the theory of Bruno Latour, Nous n'avons jamais été modernes. Je ne sais pas comment se dit ça. English. With our keyword cooperation in mind, I would like to introduce you a brief perspective of the savage mind with some Yanomami thoughts. Yanomami is a group of approximately 30,000 original people who live in the Amazon forest in Brazil and Venezuela, living off gathering, fishing, and hunting. They are one of the tribes we human beings should thank for the permanence of the green rainforest. I will say their words as if it's mine. I entrusted you with my words, and I ask you to carry them far away to let them be heard by the white people who know nothing about us. These words are from the book named The Falling Sky, Words of Yanomami Shaman. It's translated to English and published by Harvard in 2030. And there is an article about it in the book, The Dialectics of Liberation in the Dark Time, that is going to be relaunched by Terry Melley on Saturday. These are the words of David Copenauer, a Brazilian shaman, the Yanomami spokesman in this book. The Yanomami think that the visible world has an invisible dimension. They haven't done the division between nature and civilization, of course. And that, but they think that the visible world has an invisible dimension, and that consciousness has different states which affect the corporeal images and the vital essence. Copenauer has already explained that spirit is not a word in my language. I have learned the word spirit and use it in the mixed language I invented to speak to the whites about these things. Yanomamis refuse to let Amazonia land be destroyed. We simply want to continue living there as we wish, as our ancestors did before us. We do not want our forest to die, covered with wounds and the white people's waste. We are angry when they burn its trees, tear up its floor, and soil its rivers. We do not want them to come work in our forest because they cannot return the value that they destroy. It's not gold, not merchandise that keeps the plants growing. Copenauer observes that white people treat their merchandise like women with whom they are in love. They only want to lock them up and keep them jealously under their gaze. They become as enamored with them as if they were beautiful women. He described this sort of love. The merchandise is truly a fiancé to them. Their thought is so attached to it that if they damage it while it's still shining, they get so enraged that they cry. They are really in love with it. They go to sleep thinking about it like it does off with nostalgia of a beautiful woman. It occupies their thoughts even after they fall asleep. So they dream of their house, their car, their money, and all their goods, of those they already possess and those they desire again and again. It is so. Merchandise makes them euphoric and obscures all the rest of their mind. This sounds like Marx, huh? As it has already been noticed, the fetishism of merchandise is a hard to understand phenomenon. It refers to a kind of tantalizing magical quality of merchandise, which appears as a trivial thing at the first sight, but its analysis brings out that it's full of metaphysical subjects and theological niceties, as you know. Marx and Engels considers that the fetishism is the religion of the sensuous appetites. The expression she to I, used by Schopenhauer to describe the desire for merchandises, also refers to euphoric avidity and to sexual climax. By wanting to possess all this merchandise, they were seized by a limitless desire. She to I, a limitless desire. Their thought was filled with smoke and invaded by night. It closed itself to the other things. So here, once again, we meet the phenomenon of the false consciousness. Yanomamis consider that their unique, real good is the forest. Its waters, mountains, sky, fishes, trees, fruits, and other free things. In Schopenhauer words, the Yanomami want to defend their land because they were created, have lived, and want to continue to live here, there. Let it be so. They do not protect, if they do not protect it, their children will have no place to live happily. Then they will tell themselves that their fathers must have truly lacked wisdom to have left them nothing but bare and scorched land, permeated with epidemic air and crisscrossed by streams of dirty water. The gap between the different perspectives, the savage and the so-called civilized, is related to the division between nature and civilization. A division that Marcuse overcomes when he considered that the universe of emancipated senses is the humanized object world. Strange unity of subject and object, which seems quite out of line with the basic materialist conception of the permanent struggle between man and nature. In Marcuse's conception, the productive force would become a creative power that unites subject and object with the reintroduction of the erotic aesthetic component into radical theory and practice. Only if the capabilities of artistic and scientific imagination direct the construction of a sentient environment and the alienated work world becomes a world of human relationships, only then the roots of domination will dry up within individuals. No return to pre-capitalist, pre-industrial artisanship, but on the contrary, perfection of the new mutilated and distorted science and technology in the formation of the objective world in accordance with the laws of beauty. And beauty here defines an ontological condition, not that of an œuvre d'art, isolated from real existence, not that of some people or of some places, but that harmony between man and his world, woman and her world, which would shape the form of society. We can remember here an idea that runs through German idealists. I will try to say, Schönheit ist die sinnliche Erscheinung der Idee. Okay, more or less. Maybe now it's possible to notice the beginning of the meetings Marcuse proposes in some contemporary activist movements, which are catalyzed not only for the immediate material needs, they also emphasize the linking, the interwoveness, and likewise the coincidence of distant group needs, groups from the south and from the north. Because both north and south creates the internal inside and outside the borders. I would like to finish this invitation to think together with a contemporary philosopher, Patricia Hill Collins. She considers that not surrender, resist, and transform are the deep-seated concern of people who are subordinated within domestic and global expression of racism, sexism, capitalism, colonialism, and similar system of political domination and economic exploitation. Whatever the form of oppression we experience, race, class, gender, sexuality, age, ability, ethnicity, and nation, subordinated groups have a vested interest in resisting. Be it because of capitalism, colonialism, patriarchy, racism, or nationalism, the experiences with oppression are often the catalyst for critically analyzing these systems and taking action within them. Experiences provides a reason why people are willing to take on the tough job of theorizing. Being critical refers not only to theory, but also means being essential, needed, critical for something to happen. My last sentence is on Patricia. For example, water is critical in sustaining life, and love may be critical for human development.